So let's take a look at this panel here of Mitsuki and Ada talking. First we have Mitsuki saying he was being presumptuous, then Ada says, "Can I be blunt with you? We're talking about love right now, talk about drama." And Mitsuki says, "I suppose it doesn't matter." And all these things are pretty important in Japanese and they make a lot more sense, so I want to take the time to actually explain this page. In order to do that, we're going to have to go pretty far back. So in order to analyze the scene, I actually want to take a look back at some events happening in light novel 1 that talk about who Mitsuki is as a character and what the sun actually means to him. You can see he's almost having like an identity crisis where he doesn't even understand who he is, and he thinks that it doesn't matter who he is as long as he has the sun, and that most things don't matter to him. And actually from the very beginning, from the academy arc, Mitsuki has had this kuchiguse, or like phrase that he says often, "It doesn't really matter to me," or in Japanese, どうでもいいこと, and the name of this chapter is どうでもいい話. And the way he uses this phrase kind of altered a bit after he decided that Boruto was his son in the beginning of the academy arc. This is an excerpt from light novel 1 while they're fighting Shino and they're thinking that they might actually die because Shino was really strong and they were just kind of out of energy and out of chakra. Mitsuki wants to be the decoy because he knows he has the ability to kill Shino-sensei. Boruto's like, "No, I'm not gonna let anyone die, that includes Shino, I'm not gonna give up until the very end." And then Boruto smiles and it says his blonde hair is like giving off light or kind of glowing. I'll talk about the significance of Naruto and Boruto having blonde hair in the full analysis of the light novel, which I'll end up doing eventually, hopefully. But after this, I'm just gonna straight up quote the Japanese and put subtitles because I feel like it's important for you guys to actually be able to hear it. どんな状況でも周囲を明るく照らす希望そのものの輝き。闇に生きるしかできない者たちが求めるやめない太陽の光。ボルト、君はやっぱり。ほんのわずかに美月の口元が緩んだ。And this is really the first instance in the light novels where we kind of get an understanding of what the sun means to Mitsuki. You can see I'm struggling a lot in light novel 1 with morals and trying to decide what's good and what's bad and taking things too literally. And because of this, a lot of his classmates don't really trust him, but Boruto confronts him directly and is like, "Yo, that's not okay." But despite that, he still does his best to be friends with him. There's another scene I'd like to point out where Shino kind of throws this get-along party for Mitsuki to help him blend in with the class better because he's not well perceived by the class since he tried to kill Iwabe, and he's from the Hidden Sound and he keeps saying things that contradict normal human morals and logic. And afterwards, Sumire asks Mitsuki if the party was fun, and he's like, "So that was fun?" And the book describes it as if he's saying the word almost as if he's trying a new food for the first time. Like this is Mitsuki giving definition to the word fun in his mind because he didn't know what it was before. When Mitsuki eventually decides that Boruto is his son, he just follows him around in everything that he does. "I'll do it if you're doing it, Boruto. If you're not going, I won't go. If you say this is wrong, I'll believe you." Boruto becomes his ultimate role model. Moral decisions and life in general is suddenly formed around what Boruto does and thinks, because Boruto is able to make decisions based on more than just logic. And Mitsuki has a lot of awkward moments where he does or says things that aren't generally perceived well by the people around him, but he can't really understand why. And Boruto is really helping him figure all this out, which is why he says he wants to continue watching and observing him and being around him. Skipping ahead back to chapter 7, the verbiage of the Japanese in this page is actually very similar to what we saw in light novel 1, where he's saying that Boruto, or in this case Kawaki, has this kind of glow about him, this light, and he can't emit this light on his own. Mitsuki doesn't have hope, he doesn't have light, but Kawaki gave him that light and that hope. He says that Kawaki made him feel like he had permission to live and to be here, as in it's okay even if he's awkward and messes things up, because he isn't exactly human and he doesn't think like everyone else. But even then, he still has a place among them and the right to keep living, because Boruto, or Kawaki in this case, gave him that place. In his conversation with Ada in chapter 8, he's kind of processing everything that just happened in chapter 7. Demon is like, "Yo, why doesn't Kawaki ignoring you make you sad?" And Mitsuki's like, "It didn't used to bother me before, but now I'm starting to realize that it should have bothered me this whole time." Because he's an artificial human being made from scratch, he didn't really have morals or understand emotions. That whole arc with Mitsuki's will was also really important because it showed that Orochimaru really succeeded in creating an artificial being that had emotional intelligence and a will of their own. But even then, there was still a lot of things he had to come to understand, so he used Boruto as his role model, or son, for that understanding. He thought that as long as he had this son, he wouldn't stray from the right path. He didn't care about making his own decisions. And now he's realizing that there's value in deciding things for himself. The word affirmation used in English means like affirming things for himself. And I just noticed another problem here that's going on with the translation. What Mitsuki's really saying is he'll lose sight of it. He'll lose sight of who the son is. He'll lose sight of what's important. And this all happened because he had this blind faith and he wasn't trying to affirm anything. So that's where the nuance of before I'm even aware of it came from. Sorry for the low quality, I just popped this into TikTok real quick to retranslate it for you, but this is kind of how I understood things from reading the Japanese. And then we have this page here where Mitsuki is thanking Ada for helping him experience this feeling of love, almost like how he didn't really know what fun was. He also didn't really know what love was until he met Ada, and so he thanks her in this conversation. This is a pretty big deal for Mitsuki because it's kind of the first time that he's realizing this emotion and understanding it and analyzing what to do with it on his own. Now we come to the panel where Mitsuki says, "This may be a bit presumptuous, but I think you're kind of like me in a way." This is again hugely important because Mitsuki's making his own inferences and having his own conversation about what he's feeling. He goes on to say, どうしてカワキを好きなのか、その理由が自分でわからない. And this uses no pronouns, but it implies we both don't really have a basis for why Kawaki means something to us. Like for Mitsuki, it's the son or being a role model for his life and decision maker, and for Ada, it's why she likes him. He uses the word like, but it means different things for both of them when you take the full chapter into context. Ada relates it to herself and says, well, isn't that what love is anyways? Just by thinking about him, your chest gets all tight, talking about a physical symptom. And Ada steals Mitsuki's kuchigase and says, it doesn't really matter why it happens, does it? Ada assumes that because her power is causing Mitsuki to fall for her and those feelings are fake, he can't really understand the genuine things that Ada thinks she's feeling. Mitsuki says that she may be right, but he was scared. He was scared that the role model he looked up to and believed in and trusted for all these life decisions, like how he should live, what he should do, his son, was not actually his son. When Mitsuki thought about the fact that his son, his role model, the person he looked up to in life, wasn't actually who he thought he was, it scared him. He didn't want to lose it and have to make all those decisions for himself. It'd be kind of like if you lived in a country where the leader told you how things were and where you just believed it and fought for him and refused to believe anything else. And then when you got a glimpse of the outside world and you realized you might be wrong, you chose to stay inside anyways because that was easier. That's kind of what Mitsuki's going through. He just decided to stop thinking about it altogether. But Mitsuki is actually setting a great example by calmly analyzing the situation and admitting he's wrong. I've always thought that Boruto was a manga that had so many great role models for kids to look up to, but this is just another example. Anyways, Ada is like, so you're telling me I'm also just blindly happy that I've finally experienced love and I haven't looked at what I actually like about the guy I'm in love with? I'm just blindly going based off emotion and not using my brain? Now finally we're back on the page that we started on, and Mitsuki's like, well, I didn't want to put it like that. Sorry, I was being presumptuous, wasn't I? And this is the hard part to translate. Ada says, I don't know, but 素直に今思ってること言っていい? Which means like, can I say what I thought of just now? No holds barred? And Mitsuki looks at her. And the equivalent of what Ada says here is basically, don't you feel like we're up late at a slumber party talking about crushes together? Ada has always had this kind of preppy valley girl vibe to me, and I think this scene is especially hilarious, but it's really hard to translate. Ada says, 私たち超恋話してるね. And koibon is like love talk in general about feelings and figuring out your feelings, and because Mitsuki is helping Ada think more in depth about her feelings for Kawaki, and Mitsuki himself is talking about his feelings for Ada, and now he came to the realization that his son wasn't actually his son, all this is kind of emotional, which is where the word emokunai comes in. Emo is short for emotional, but the word was used to describe emo people as well because they're really into their emotions and all that. But basically, this line has like 10 different translations and none of them really work in this situation, so I just tried to explain it by completely screwing what's actually written there and just giving you the vibe. But anyway, that's why Daemon is so shocked in the next panel. He's like, what did you say, this poor man? And Mitsuki blushes because again, this makes him feel included, human, like part of the conversation, like he matters. And the girl he likes, even if it's artificially liking, is having an in-depth conversation with him and enjoying it. And so he looks away and smiles and says his kuchikase again. Well, I guess it didn't matter either way. And I'm assuming this is referring to Ada finding out the answer to her question because Mitsuki already has the answers to his. But this conversation leads Ada to think, maybe I am just blindly crushing on Kawaki and I should actually consider what I want in a relationship instead of just going on based on this feeling of love. Because love is more than a feeling, it's also actions, and Kawaki's actions are not showing Ada any love. That's all for this video. I really wasn't expecting it to be this long, but I hope it helped clear some things up.